Okay, good afternoon. We're going to get started today. I hope you all enjoyed the morning and afternoon workshops and this morning's plenary session. This afternoon, we're going to hear from Congressman Chaka Fattah and Nancy Sutley, the chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and we also have a terrific panel on sustainable communities. I also want to remind you not to forget to join us for the conference reception, which will be down in these ballrooms starting at 6:30. It'll be a great opportunity to network and talk more about our strategies on how to fight successfully for good green jobs. And now I'd like to turn the podium back over to Stan Johnson, the Secretary-Treasurer of the United Steelworkers. Stan?
Thanks, Dave. I certainly hope the first rounds of workshops have gone exceptionally well. We finished our rapid response conference just a few minutes ago and hopefully have several steelworkers in the room now, and will be participating to the conclusion of the conference. I wanted to take just a moment from the podium to comment on a statement I heard this morning in the excellent panel discussion from Cecil Corbin. Cecil said that some things were like pulling an elephant through a garden hose. That really struck a chord with me, because sometimes, you know, it is like, indeed, a lot of what we're trying to do is like pulling the proverbial elephant through the garden hose. And to get some politicians, some I will highlight, politicians to understand that we can have good jobs and green jobs. I know my sisters and brothers in the labor movement that are in the room, and most of you kind of understand this dilemma. But we are making a lot of progress. Maybe we just have the trunk, one tusk, maybe one ear in the garden hose right now, but we are making progress. But we have a very important set of elections coming up in November. And if we do the right things in November, maybe if we all push the proverbial elephant and pull the proverbial elephant, that the grease that we can provide in the election will get that behemoth through the hose. So I would encourage everyone to engage as much as possible as we go forward to put that proverbial elephant through that garden hose. It is possible. Our next speaker is serving the his ninth term in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Chaka Fattah represents the 2nd District right here in Philadelphia, and he is a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee, as well as a ranking member on the House Subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, Science, and related agencies. Congressman Fattah is the co-chair of the Congressional Urban Caucus and was an early sponsor of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, as well as many important pieces of legislation throughout his career. Currently, one pivotal piece for the green economy that he is working on is the Clean Energy Act, which would fund a series of loan guarantees and spur the development of alternative power technologies. Before being elected to Congress, he served as representative in the Pennsylvania State House and as a senator in the Pennsylvania State Senate. He has received numerous awards, honorary doctorates, and other honors, and we are extremely pleased to have him here today. Please join me in providing a warm welcome to Congressman Chaka Fattah of Pennsylvania's 2nd Congressional District.
There's hope for all among those loved and loved.
Well, welcome and good afternoon. The work that you are engaged in is so very important to our country's future. And to see this alliance of labor and environmental groups working together, this brings a great deal of joy to our heart, in that you would pick our home city to convene in. There's a lot of examples I could point to in our city that I think would give rise to what it is that this alliance has inspired. I could talk about our Eagles Stadium, which is now the first stadium anywhere in the country completely powered by solar and wind energy. And I know there's some fans of other teams in the room, so I won't make any predictions about what might happen in the season, but I do think that it sets the benchmark for other major venues to look at how they can participate in a way that creates jobs and utilizes renewable energy. If any flew in through our terminal at the airport, our new terminal is the first in our country to be totally powered by wind energy. So this is a city that has been walking the walk, not just talking the talk, on this question of green, clean energy through a program that I initiated in the stimulus bill, where we funded some 1,000 communities with energy efficiency grants based on population. Cities all across our country were able to retrofit police stations, fire stations, municipal buildings. In Philadelphia, one of the projects was to change out every single traffic light, 82,000 of them here in Philadelphia, and to energy efficient bulbs. And it's saving the city of Philadelphia and its taxpayers $1 million a year in their electric bill. There are examples throughout, and through one of the grants focused on the smart grid, some 500,000 residents are going to have smart meters installed so that they can use energy efficiency in a relevant way in their lifestyles to control their energy costs. And we know this works, and the nonprofit groups that are partnering with the local utility company on this project, this is going to mean more money in the pockets of working class families in our city, and it's going to mean the savings of millions of dollars in energy costs. There are students right now taking classes at our community college in Northeast Campus, where we have a geothermal unit funded through a federal grant, providing heat and air conditioning at that community college annex, a brand new facility. So in our city, you can find plenty of examples, but one of the ones that I know that you have already met, and if you haven't, you should take time to meet them. We have some young students who have formed an entity called Bright Ideas. These are high school students who are engaged in an effort as part of a sustainable high school curriculum, taking on real projects. They've developed a company that can go into homes, change out light bulbs, energy efficient bulbs, pre-fund that, and then make money off of share in the savings with the family as their energy bill is reduced over time. These young people, who are part of a group of young people engaged in addressing real life problems, make all of us hopeful about our country's future. Now let me just say a few things about this green economy. As others who perhaps are less informed try to make light of this, this is a part of our economy that's actually growing at a faster clip than the recovering economy in our country. That is that we've seen more jobs added at a faster pace, at an 8.3% growing percentage versus almost 3% for the rest of the economy. We can do even more, and we don't have to just admire Honduras having the largest wind farm in our hemisphere. We can invest more in wind energy. We can invest not just in geothermal, but focusing on tidal energy. We can do more in terms of solar. I met with some of the CEOs of our chemical companies located here in the Philadelphia area who have developed through this very thin film a much more economical product that can be brought to market. So there's a lot that can be done working together. And we don't have to make a choice between our environment and livelihoods, that we can utilize our God-given sense to think our way through. And you've done this in so many different ways. But here in Philadelphia, we have some of the best examples, I believe, of how cities, how communities can go about tackling these problems. It'd be wonderful if we could find such common sense in the Congress of the United States. In a majority, we have a majority that wants to do less of everything that the country needs to do, less in terms of education, less in terms of health care. And they want to do little or nothing when it comes to renewable energy. This is not the way to go. We see the European Energy Alliance announcing its 2030 goals, that in order to compete with the United States and with the Pacific Rim countries, they need to invest more in renewable energy. If our competitors can see this, one of the largest developers of power plants in China says that China's future is in renewable energy. So we have a situation where this is really not a competition between Democrats and Republicans. This really at its heart is a competition between America and our economic competitors. And we can't afford to stand still. We have to move forward. And I want to continue to work with our friends in labor. I know I saw one of my friends with the Steelworkers, Lindsay Patterson, who was here, and so many others. Let us continue to work together and not be pulled apart. And that's why this alliance is so important. That's why I'm here today, because I really want to salute you for what you are doing, remind you that the reward for doing good work is more work, and let you know that there are plenty who want to join with you as that work is done on behalf of our country and on behalf of future generations of workers. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Those were great words of wisdom and words that I expect will motivate all of us to work even harder than the Congressman asked us to. Thank you again. Now, the environmental movement has many fine and passionate leaders around the country, but we're lucky to have with us today one of them who has taken on a particularly critical and important job in defending the role of science in American public life. So I'd now like to introduce someone who has been a strong advocate for the environment and for the rights of working people for over 30 years, who has been a leader and is now president of the Union of Concerned Scientists, a member of the board of the BlueGreen Alliance, a partner organization, and a great friend, Kevin Knobloch, to say a few words to us and introduce our next speaker. Kevin?
I got a little music. Thank you so much, David. And in response to the Congressman, it is a great privilege to be here in this wonderful city of Philadelphia. As a native Bostonian, we sometimes have a little bit of a rivalry in terms of who quite got this whole experiment in self-governance going in this country. But I'm willing today to agree that it's a tie, that we together, Boston and Philadelphia, set the pace and got this great thing going. And it is a great nation. It's a great system of self-governance that's actually under fire right now. And we at the Union of Concerned Scientists are really very much focused on the nexus of science and democracy, the belief that when science is fed into, integrated into governance in a free and open way, that leads us to great things. Those are the times in our history when we become more prosperous, more secure, healthier, and the times when science is dismissed or ignored or censored or repressed, suppressed, kind of like now, when the know-nothings come into play and block science from being fully considered by our elected officials as they make their important policy decisions, that those are times when we're pushed back on our heels. We do not make the same kind of progress. And the Congressman's reference to this ideological schism that has come into play, such that renewable energy becomes an ideological football, is really quite bizarre, when in fact it is about self-reliance. It is about reducing respiratory disease. It is about producing jobs that can't be exported, good jobs, and jobs and it's about putting more money into the pockets of consumers, businesses, and ultimately making us a leaner and a meaner society. And that all started in Boston and Philadelphia. Go figure. Well, the Obama administration has moved our country forward in a number of very important ways. Going back to in the depths of the recession, when President Obama first took office, he was putting together a stimulus financing plan, and he and his team made sure that upwards of $80 billion of that investment went to clean energy technology, went to creating clean energy jobs from the outset. This is an administration after decades of plateauing and meandering along, oversaw 2 rounds of increasing fuel economy standards for passenger vehicles, for cars and light trucks, so that we are now on track by the year 2025 to have the average fuel economy of the American passenger vehicle fleet to be almost 55 miles to the gallon. Now that's the average, and that includes SUVs, pickup trucks, and minivans. So that means that American engineers, American designers, American assembly workers are going to be building vehicles that get 70 and 80 miles to the gallon in order to bring that average up. On top of that, this administration wrote and put in place the first ever fuel economy standards for medium and heavy-duty trucks that is going to save trucking companies and those independent truckers a lot of money, make those operations leaner and meaner, and ultimately save us consumers in this increasing shipping environment. You know, the internet shopping scene and all of that help save us on shipping costs. This administration has not missed an opportunity to reduce our reliance on imported oil, such that when the President called for reducing our dependence on imported oil by over 30% over the next decade and a half, in the first couple years of his administration, he can lay claim to getting us a third of the way there through those fuel economy standards and other steps and measures. This administration, under the fabulous leadership at the Environmental Protection Agency, Lisa Jackson and the regional administrators, has put in place against one of the fiercest attacks on this agency that you will see any time in our history, unwarranted attacks, has brought forward these important rules that had gotten stacked up during the Bush administration, required by Congress, required by the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and so on, and are now coming forward. So the air toxics rule, the new greenhouse gas rule for new plants. These are rules that actually are going to reduce soot, smog, mercury, arsenic, the very things that are killing our people, and will save hundreds of thousands of lives as they're implemented. And I could go on. It's an impressive record. It's not well known, I think, because those of us on the advocacy side often get caught up in what doesn't get done or get slow-walked, but it's a very impressive record. And the reason I'm taking a minute on that is because our next speaker, Nancy Sutley, has been a central driver of every one of these initiatives in her role as chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality. Nancy, in this role, coordinates all the federal environmental efforts and works with agencies and the White House offices to develop environmental policies and initiatives. As such, she is the principal environmental advisor to President Obama, and because of the environmental impacts of energy policy, is also a principal energy advisor. Prior to her appointment as chair of the Council of Environmental Quality, she was the deputy mayor for energy and environment in Los Angeles. She represented the city on the board of directors for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and she served as energy advisor to former California Governor Gray Davis. She was deputy director for policy and intergovernmental affairs at the California EPA and worked for the US EPA under President Clinton. She is doing wonderful work that is helping to build a more resilient economy with good green jobs, and we are very honored to have her here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nancy Sutley.
Among those loved the most.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you to the Blue-Green Alliance and all of you here for having me today. And it's really great to see all of you. And let me start with a thank you to all of you for everything that you're doing to focus our efforts and focus your efforts on building green jobs and a clean energy economy. And I know that you're talking today about a lot of very interesting and very exciting sustainability developments in many sectors, in transportation and housing and energy. And this work really that you're doing today and that you do every day is really laying the groundwork for the American economy of the future. So this afternoon I'd just like to spend a few minutes talking about how important that work is for our economy and some of the things that the Obama administration is doing to support your efforts and the green jobs of this generation and the generations to come. In the State of the Union address this year, the President laid out a blueprint for the American economy, called it an economy that's built to last, an economy that's built on American manufacturing, on skills for American workers, on a renewal of American values, and very importantly, American clean energy. Now, this blueprint really reflects, I think, the President's firm belief that we, as a country, do best when everyone gets a fair shot, when everyone does their fair share, and everybody plays by the same rules. A key part of this plan is leading the world in clean energy. The President has said that as long as he's president, we'll not back away from the promise of clean energy for our economy, for our environment, and for our security. That we're not going to cede industries like wind and solar and advanced batteries to other countries, to China and Germany, because we need these jobs and these industries here in the United States and here in Pennsylvania. So the President's laid out a plan for a new era of American energy, an all-of-the-above approach that doubles down on homegrown and alternative energy sources that will be designed and produced by American workers. Now, last month, the White House released a progress report on the President's blueprint for a secure energy future. And that report shows that since the start of this administration, America's dependence on foreign oil has gone down every year, falling below 50% in 2010 for the first time in 13 years, and falling to 45% in 2011, the lowest level since 1995. I think that's significant progress. The President believes we must continue to take a sustained, all-of-the-above approach to American energy, a strategy that's aimed at reducing our reliance on foreign oil, that's focused on saving families money and families and businesses money at the pump, and positioning the United States as the global leader in clean energy. Right now, oil production in the U.S. is at an 8-year high, and we'll continue to develop oil and gas resources in a responsible way. But we know we also need to develop clean American energy and those industries for the 21st century, and we're doubling down on clean sources of energy like wind and solar, and that's a strategy that's cleaner, cheaper, and full of new jobs. And we're making significant progress. We started with a $90 billion investment in the Recovery Act, and this has supported hundreds of thousands of jobs and put us on track to double renewable energy generation in this country by the end of this year. That's a bold goal that the President laid out in 2008, and we will beat it. In fact, in 2011, the United States reclaimed the position as the world's leading investor in clean energy. We're also looking at how we can work better and smarter to encourage clean energy industries to take hold and thrive in the United States. Let me give you one example. Last week, we announced that the administration had signed an agreement with the governors of Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, and Pennsylvania to streamline the efficient and responsible development of offshore wind energy in the Great Lakes. Unlocking the offshore wind resources in the Great Lakes could yield tremendous economic and environmental benefits throughout the region. The Great Lakes have the potential to produce more than 700 gigawatts of energy from offshore wind, about 1/5 the total offshore wind potential in the United States. If we develop even a small portion of this, we could create tens of thousands of clean energy jobs, generate revenue for local businesses, and reduce pollution in our communities. We're also focused on reducing our dependence on foreign oil by putting in place standards that will ensure that we use less of it. In an economy that relies on oil, the price at the pump affects everybody: workers, farmers, truck drivers, small business owners, and all of us. And while fuel expenditures climbed sharply over the last 25 years, as Kevin noted, fuel economy standards in the U.S. stayed flat. So when President Obama took office in 2009, U.S. fuel economy standards for passenger cars were the same as they'd been since 1985, and there were no fuel economy standards for commercial trucks. Last year, the administration announced historic new fuel economy standards that are certainly one of the President's signature environmental achievements so far, and really one of the most important environmental achievements, certainly of recent memory. These standards double the fuel efficiency of cars and light trucks by 2025. They'll save $1.7 trillion in fuel costs. They'll promote innovation and eliminate 6 billion metric tons of carbon pollution. So what this means, in simple terms, is that you fill up your car every 2 weeks instead of filling it up every week. Now, these proposed standards, these final standards and the new proposed standards were backed by 13 auto companies representing more than 90% of the U.S. auto sales. They were also backed by consumer organizations, by the UAW, and by states, environmental groups, and other stakeholders. And this support reflects the really unprecedented level of engagement between the federal agencies and the stakeholders, and that's something that the President called for. The administration met repeatedly with key stakeholders, including the auto manufacturers, to understand the technical ability to achieve these vehicle improvements. So as a result, we have standards that are aggressive, but they're also achievable and they're good for the economy. The administration also finalized the first of their kind fuel efficiency and greenhouse standards for heavy-duty trucks that will save businesses $50 billion on fuel. And we've pursued a suite of initiatives that will complement the vehicle standards and make sure that we'll develop and manufacture advanced vehicle technologies here in the U.S. The Recovery Act included more than $2 billion for advanced vehicle technologies, an investment that's already transforming the advanced battery industry in the United States. By 2015, the U.S. will be able to produce enough batteries and components to support 1 million plug-in hybrid and electric vehicles. In 2009, the U.S. had only 2 factories manufacturing advanced vehicle batteries. Since then, We've supported 30 new advanced battery and electric vehicle component plants that are providing jobs across the country. Oops. Trying to spill. We're also promoting advanced technology vehicles by leveraging the buying power of the federal government and leading by example through smart management of government vehicle fleets. In October of 2009, the President signed an ambitious executive order on federal sustainability, directing federal agencies to reduce energy use, to reduce fuel use, water use, and greenhouse gas emissions. The federal government operates 600,000 fleet vehicles, the largest fleet of light-duty vehicles in America. That means that we can have a major impact in encouraging new markets for advanced technology vehicles. In fact, we've already doubled the number of hybrid cars and trucks in the federal fleet, and last year the President directed federal agencies to ensure that they are purchasing only alternative fuel vehicles. That's 100% of government purchases by 2015. The federal government has billions of dollars in purchasing power, and we're working to integrate sustainability into how we operate and do business across the board. And of course, we know that the cleanest energy in the world is the energy we don't use at all. And we're making strategic investments to integrate energy efficiency into the way we live and build in this country. America's homes, businesses, and factories account for more than 70% of the energy we consume, and we can take some very simple and common sense steps to bring those numbers down. Last year, the President launched the Better Buildings Initiative to improve commercial building efficiency by 20% by 2020 and help to reduce energy costs for American businesses by $40 billion. And that's money that can be put to better use, hiring more workers and inventing new products. And also will put people back to work right away. The Better Buildings Initiative aims to encourage the private sector to invest in upgrading offices, stores, schools, municipal buildings, and the whole spectrum of commercial buildings. We've challenged CEOs, mayors, and university presidents to lead the way in energy efficiency through a partnership that gives them incentives and asks them to commit to achieving goals. In December, President Obama, former President Clinton, and 60 leading CEOs, mayors, and other leaders announced $4 billion in commitments, including $2 billion of private capital to retrofit offices, schools, city buildings, and other commercial buildings. The President committed $2 billion for energy upgrades to federal buildings through energy service performance contracts at no upfront cost to taxpayers. Now, this is all a very straightforward and common sense way to cut costs, to waste less energy, and to support good paying jobs in the energy retrofit market. We know that sustainable communities and economies begin at the ground level, and much of the important work is done at the local level, where decisions are made about building codes and local transportation options, decisions about whether to put solar panels on rooftops or invest in public transit. We know cities across the country are doing great work in this space, and certainly here in Philadelphia, and we commend Mayor Nutter and the City of Philadelphia for their leadership efforts on sustainability. But there's still more that we can do and have to do at the federal level. Last week, EPA took a common sense step to reduce pollution in our air and move us into a new era of American energy when they proposed the first Clean Air Act standard for carbon pollution from new power plants. EPA's proposed standard will rely on the use of clean American-made technology to tackle a challenge that we can't leave to our kids and to our grandkids. And this approach allows companies to invest in modern infrastructure that will create good-paying jobs now and into the future. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of the work that we're doing in the Obama administration to support the clean energy economy and to grow green jobs in places like Philadelphia and across the country, because we know these are the kinds of jobs that will keep us healthy and thriving in the 21st century. These jobs are real. They'll have a real impact on communities, so we know that they already are. The Bureau of Labor Statistics recently released a report that found that more than 3 million U.S. jobs were linked to the production of green goods and services in 2010. Jobs in manufacturing, in clean energy, in construction, and more than 180,000 of those jobs are right here in Pennsylvania. Now, President Obama continues to urge Congress to act, to do things like pass a clean energy standard that'll help create a market for innovation, to eliminate billions of dollars in subsidies for the oil industry, and in the meantime, the administration is moving forward with critical investments and smart policies to keep the jobs and industries of the 21st century here in the United States. We have so much more to do, and we can't do it without your leadership and support. We have seen throughout our history how American innovation and ingenuity lights the way, and here we go again. Together, we can make sure that more of these products, more services, and more good green jobs are made here in the United States. So thank you again for all the work that you're doing. And we'll keep doing our part, and we'll try to keep doing everything we can to support you. And I look forward to working with you towards a healthy and prosperous future for the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everything that you're doing to help us. Thank you so much, Chairperson Sutley, for everything you do and for all that your administration has done in helping us. Now, as our next panel comes forward, every community should be a sustainable community in America. No American should have to worry about the quality of their air or water, and we should all be safe in our homes from toxic chemicals and pollutants. We must also have a plan to win and keep good jobs in the 21st century economy to ensure our communities are built on a strong economic and environmental foundation. But how do we achieve sustainable communities? And how do we ensure that the United States doesn't fall behind in the race to win the good jobs that the clean economy has in them? This afternoon's plenary panel, entitled Sustainable Communities and a Clean Energy Jobs Plan for the 21st Century, featuring leaders and experts from the business, labor, academic, and environmental communities, will be answering those and many more questions. To moderate this panel, we're pleased to have Leanne Kruger-Banachke, the Executive Director of the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia, a 500-plus member business organization that brings together leaders who share an interest in running successful companies that have a positive social and environmental impact. Before joining the Sustainable Business Network, she worked with nonprofit organizations in Pennsylvania, New York, and South Africa, and she's received numerous awards for her work. Please welcome Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia Executive Director Leanne Kruger-Banachke.
Thanks, David. So how many of you were at the first Green Jobs Conference in Pittsburgh about 5 years ago? I remember sitting in that room, and it's so exciting to see how this movement has grown, right? Back in those days, it was before the stimulus package was passed, including $500 million for green job training. Proud to say that Philadelphia received more of those dollars than any other city in the country. Yes, we're very proud of that. And the climate really has changed, so I'm proud to be with you today. I've attended all of the conferences. Remember in 2008, actually, 2009, standing with a delegation of labor and workforce leaders from Pennsylvania, business leaders from Philadelphia, talking to our senators right before the Recovery Act vote was passed, advocating for the inclusion of green jobs training dollars. So it's so exciting to see how far that's come. And I'm pleased to welcome the panel here today as well. We've got some really distinguished experts to share their voices with you. I'm going to ask each panelist to make a very brief introduction. And so my job as moderator today is to keep us on track, to make sure that no one voice dominates, and that we're able to move through a real discussion, because our audience really does want to hear our opinions about sustainable communities and a clean energy plan for the 21st century. So brief, I'm going to ask you to give your elevator pitch. So you've got 1 minute to introduce yourself, and then we'll go right into questions. Ed.
I'm Ed Murphy. I'm the director of the Workforce Development Institute, which is a nonprofit partner of the New York State AFL-CIO. We do education, training, economic development. We give out child care money. We founded and fund the New York State Apollo Alliance. We've put together a Solar Jobs Coalition. We have a Green Tradesman Card program that we train the building trades to work with under US GBC standards. And I'd like to close with more symbolic language. One of the things we do is culture, and we do photography. The question I would have is, for the audience, how many of the women here are Girl Scouts growing up? How many people in the last month or so bought Girl Scout cookies? Okay. 100 years ago, the Girl Scouts were founded. And, you know, if you bought the cookies, you see that. But there was something else that happened 100 years ago. In Lawrence, Massachusetts, a group of women and girls walked out the door of a mill. And when they were asked, what did they want? They said bread and roses. They wanted to be treated as human beings. WDI has put together a program around this. We put together this poster, and I'd like this to be the symbolic language of who we are. We remember where we come from. We remember the women that went out on that strike. And when they asked for bread and roses, today we ask for jobs and a clean environment. These posters are out front at the registration desk. I would ask you to pick them up, post them up, help people remember that we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Great, thanks. Don?
Hi, I'm Don Lewis, president of SCA Americas, part of SCA globally. We're a $16.5 billion hygiene company. We have products in over 100 countries globally. In North America specifically, one of our large businesses is the professional hygiene business, which is towel, tissue, and napkin products sold in the away from home arena. You've probably seen our ExpressNap products if you've gone to a lot of venues in an innovative dispenser system. But the key to the products we make is they're 100% recycled. We've just, in the last decade, we've just recycled our 12 billionth pound of waste paper and make great towel, tissue, and napkin products. So we're very proud of our relationship with the United Steelworkers, and together we have a very sustainable business.
Kevin.
As you know, I'm Kevin Knobloch, the president of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and we are a national organization of scientists and non-scientists, but non-scientists who support the mission of ensuring that science is informing public policy. And in the context of this discussion, we not only have scientists and technical people who understand the body of climate science, what's happening in terms of climate change, but also what we can do about it, the solution set. So we have a lot of deep engineering and other knowledge around renewable energy, energy efficiency, advanced vehicle technology, sustainable forestry, and the like, and really have been hard at work trying to build the roadmap to how we can actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions on the scale that we really must.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Foley.
Good afternoon. My name is Hank Foley. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm representing two organizations, both Penn State University, which is a 150-year-old land-grant university dedicated to education, research, and outreach for the state, the region, and the nation. I'm also the director and principal investigator for something called the Greater Philadelphia Innovation Cluster. And I believe that's probably why I'm on this panel today. It's a DOE hub, and it's one of three that have been awarded so far in the country. one to Caltech, one to Oak Ridge National Labs, one to Penn State, and a consortium of other schools and corporations. And we're located here in Philadelphia at the Navy Yard. Our goal is the same goal that we heard Nancy speak of, namely that is to look at the building sector and essentially to revolutionize it. Our goal is to cut 20% of the energy that is wasted in buildings like this by 2020. That's the nation's goal, that's our goal. We have to do it with people, we have to do it with information, and we have to do it with technology. No one of those is the solution. We need all three of them. I'll elaborate more if I get a chance, but I'm also the son of a 92-year-old union organizer and union member, so there you go.
And Judy.
Hi, I'm Judith Enck. I'm a regional administrator for US EPA. I work for Lisa Jackson. The way EPA is set up, there are 10 different regions. I have the best region because it's New York, New Jersey, the 8 Indian nations in New York, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. Before coming to EPA, I worked for 10 years in the New York Governor's Office and the New York Attorney General's Office. And before that, I was an environmental organizer with NYPIRG and also environmental advocates. And before I get into my very serious remarks, I want to say that I feel like I'm on the set of Oprah. And I want to announce under your seats, you'll find maybe you get a hybrid, you get a compost bin, you get a low-flow toilet. And I think we should go to Oprah with that theme, a little environmental green products.
Thank you, panelists. And so I'm going to go right into questions. There's lots of things that we could cover today, but I'm going to start with one of the first things that I'm always asked. Everybody's talking about green jobs. I'm often asked to define what a green job is, what kind of jobs are we talking about. Sometimes from folks who want to play devil's advocate, do these jobs really exist? And so 2 weeks ago, the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics released the most complete picture to date of the country's green workforce. Pennsylvania came out on top, number 5, with more than 100,000 green jobs. So I'm going to put this to you. Why do you think Pennsylvania is a leader in the green economy? Why are we coming out on top? And whoever would like to can start.
Sure, I think we've had terrific leadership over the last 8 to 10 years. I think the governor of Pennsylvania in the previous administration was very devoted and dedicated to this. I think here in Philadelphia, Mayor Nutter has just been outstanding. I think one of the reasons we were able to procure the DOE hub and bring it to Philadelphia is because of the kinds of things that he had been saying about making Philadelphia a very green city. I think on the other side of the state, they're seeking to do the same thing. So I think we've had good leadership, and I think we have a base of educated people who get it and who are trying to make it happen.
Other thoughts? I know you don't all represent Pennsylvania, but other opinions on this?
Well, I would just jump in and say, I'm not as familiar with Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, but in terms of the question of what is a green job, the obvious part of the answer are those people who are fabricating wind turbines and wind towers, installing them, maintaining them, and all of that. I think it's much broader. I think it's the folks who work at General Electric or Maytag who are building the most efficient washers, dryers, dishwashers, heating, cooling systems. And it's also striking that there are a lot of jobs that you wouldn't necessarily think of as a green job, but in fact, if they're involved in this transition to a clean energy economy, pouring concrete, driving a truck, bending metal, those are green jobs too. And I think the broader definition we take, I think that we're not going to be more accurate, but over time, it won't be an anomaly. It will shift to being the majority of the workforce.
I know that for the last few years, the focus has been mostly on renewable energy, energy efficiency, which is essential, but I also want to invite us to sort of broaden our understanding of green jobs. For instance, I think EPA is one of the real drivers in terms of creating green jobs. 30 years ago, Congress established Superfund to clean up abandoned toxic waste sites. Now, of course, we'd rather not have these toxic waste sites. We'd rather have an investment in pollution prevention, green chemistry. but unfortunately they are there. So in my own EPA region, we've identified, just in New York and New Jersey, about 4,200 jobs were created cleaning up toxic waste sites. My beloved Hudson River in New York, which has been so devastated by PCB pollution, we finally have gotten going on dredging. Don't worry, it's working out great. And that was 500 new jobs just from cleaning up one contaminated river. So I think we want to sort of go back, look at the Superfund program, look at funding for water infrastructure. All of our cities have drinking water systems, wastewater systems that are failing. Repairing them will create jobs. In fact, in just New York and New Jersey, we created 13,200 jobs dispersing EPA funds for water upgrades, including President Obama's Recovery Act funding. You look at the mercury pollution power plant rule. I loved Ed's poster, and I'll remember that image. I guess my image is I come with a stack of federal regulations. And those regulations not only protect public health and the environment, but they create jobs. In December, Administrator Lisa Jackson announced the mercury pollution standards from power plants, which I find amazing. Mercury from power plants was largely unregulated until this regulation came forward, except in some individual states that have taken action. Implementing this one mercury regulation creates 46,000 short-term jobs, 8,000 long-term jobs, mostly in the utility sector. So I think, to quote one of my colleagues at EPA, EPA is a mean green job creation machine and is actually helping create local jobs where we need them most.
If I could add just a bit. We've done a baseline report here in the greater Philadelphia region, which is the 10-county region. And we've looked at those buildings that we think are optimally sort of placed to do a retrofit on. And a retrofit means going in and figuring out what you could change in lighting, insulation, building envelope, plug loads, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and so forth, and doing it better and reducing the energy use of these buildings. We estimate that there could be as many buildings as would take $618 million to actually retrofit. So I didn't say that quite right, but if you figured $1 million per retrofit, there are probably 600 to 700 buildings already that could be done. All right? And that's, again, good jobs for people. These are jobs that really mean something. We think it could be as many as 23,000 jobs that could be taken up in retrofitting these buildings. Someone said that energy saved is energy not wasted and therefore pollution not generated. So think about it. The United States uses 100 quadrillion quads, that is, of BTUs a year in energy. It's an enormous number. 40% of that is used in buildings, and well over half of that literally goes out the window, up the stack, just gone, because we don't build the buildings efficiently and we don't operate them properly. So that's our goal. Our goal is to really get in there, understand that, and start to produce jobs and make this economy around retrofitting work out, this market, if you will, work out.
Other examples of how your work is creating green jobs?
Well, to address the essence of your question, I have to move beyond Pennsylvania to New York, which is also in the Brookings report, very high up there. And I think it's, to beyond Judith, it's thought leaders. I think having good thought leaders and people who are willing to talk to people that you disagree with, and the ability of the unions and business and the environmentalists to come together as coalitions who are willing to work together and find a sense of what you can do together. And so it's the thought leaders, it's the having good organizers, which I think we have to come back to again and again, and then people having the muscle to implement some of that, not just to say it's a good idea, but to go to the legislature, go to the businesses, and find a way that they can be satisfied as well as we can be satisfied in that dialogue.
I have a comment as well. In our industry, we find that as customer demand increases for green products, it's actually given us a competitive advantage. And in a marketplace that's been flat or growing slightly, we've been able to grow several times faster than the marketplace employing more green jobs along the way. Also, being a company that uses recycled fiber, we found, especially when we started our plant in Alabama, we were adding a second paper machine, and we found that we really couldn't get the waste paper. A lot of it's being exported to China. And so with Atlanta being one of our major markets to collect recycling, we were able to partner with local recyclers and actually give them equipment to build up their businesses, which increased the amount of recycled fiber coming from the commercial buildings in Atlanta from 15% to 60% recovery. So it's not only our own jobs, but it's that ripple effect that we've all spoken of that creates more and more jobs as it gets extended.
So let me understand this. SCA needed more product, more recycled content to be able to grow your line of products, and you were able to actually invest in the local recycling industry to help keep some of that here.
We did. Lots of times they were underfunded, or others were committed to China. So we made that investment in small businesses, which allowed them to grow and flourish, and at the same time allowed us to have that waste paper stream we needed to make our product.
So it's not just the jobs that you created directly, but the jobs that you're also having to create indirectly. And can you talk about the kind of green jobs that are being created within SCA?
In all areas of our company, green jobs are being created. We're really looking at getting more expertise and more green technology into our business. We've used the conventional green additions to our facilities using the photo solar cells and adding wind turbines to our facility in Wisconsin. And when we dedicated, the union representative said, when I was speaking of sustainability, I was using it in the conventional sense, but he was explaining how sustainability meant sustainability and jobs. So as our business continues to grow, whether it be the hourly workforce, salary workforce, engineers, people in technology, they've all grown. So we've added several hundreds of jobs in different marketplaces over the last 5 years.
At the Sustainable Business Network, we define sustainability as triple bottom line, so looking not just at the environmental impact, but the social impact.
Correct.
So having good jobs created that are also having a positive environmental benefit.
Absolutely,
That sounds like
with
what
good
you're doing.
corporate social responsibility.
So let's shift gears and talk about policy. We heard from Chair Sutley some of the things that the administration has already put in place that would drive policy around green job creation. I'd like each of you to respond to the question of what policy would you like to see today that you think could really be a driver around green jobs and sustainable communities? And whoever wants to take that first. Kevin, I'm thinking you probably...
Sure. We, a big part of our focus in terms of setting public policy in place has been to establish performance standards. That is, not to pick technological winners or losers, but figure out what the science says needs to be our standard. And so, for example, the renewable electricity standard. This was the concept where you acquire power generators in a particular jurisdiction by increasing percentages of new renewable energy. Started in California in the late 90s. Today there are 30 states that have renewable electricity standards, including here in Pennsylvania. Each one of those states set their own percentage. A lot of them have increased the percentage over time. California now has the most forward-leaning one at 33% by, I believe, 2020. But here's the cool thing. In any one of those states, we're not saying it's got to be wind or it's got to be a geothermal. Each state can play to their strengths. And look at what's happening to the solar industry, the geothermal industry, the wind power industry. Solar today has about 108,000 direct jobs. That is a doubling in 3 years of those jobs. Wind power has about 75,000 jobs, and DOE projects that between now and 2030, it's going to increase fivefold to 500,000 direct jobs in those industries. But some other interesting things are happening too. In the wind industry, a majority, 60% of those turbines and towers and blades that are installed in this country are now manufactured here, more than doubling of what it was less than 5 years ago. In the solar sector, we're a net exporter of those panels. So those economies are just, those sectors are just exploding, double-digit growth, and it has a direct result because of forward thinking, setting concrete goals with these renewable policies. The fuel economy standards we were talking about earlier, our analysis projects will lead to a creation of 300,000 new jobs when fully implemented. Now, Probably about 30,000 of those are directly in auto manufacturing. The other jobs come, this is the spin-off effect, come from the money that we and businesses save at the pump. That money today is, much of that is going out of state and out of country. What happens when you pay half as much to fill up your tank? You take that money and you might save it, you might pay off your credit card bills, but most likely you're going to recycle it more locally. That spin-off effect creates jobs. So, I didn't answer your question, which is what policy going forward.
Right. What's at the top of your list right now?
A national clean energy standard, which the president has called for. 30 states have showed the way forward. They're very successful. They're not only creating business opportunities, creating wealth, jobs, they're expanding the tax base in each of those states and pushing technology. So a national standard would really double down.
Let me ask you to go one step further. What will it take for us to get a national clean energy standard?
To light a fire under the U.S. Congress. You know, the president did not make some in the environmental community happy when he proposed his national clean energy standard because he included nuclear energy in it. He included natural gas in it. He included clean coal. But it wasn't lost on us that he set the goal so ambitiously that there's room for very robust growth in terms of efficiency and renewables in addition to. We were worried, particularly because of the cost of nuclear power, that would kind of hog a lot of the resources if it were included under the umbrella. But I think it's been skillfully crafted, whatever you think of those other options. But where he's going with that, of course, is trying to build a political coalition. So it's not renewables and efficiency against conventional energy, but rather there's room at the table for some of these other bridge technologies and bridge fuels. So the politics are there if we make them work, if we go out and help members of Congress understand this is going to help their state, their districts.
Dr. Foley, GPIC is working on energy efficiency. What's your number one from a policy perspective?
Well, let me just say first that we have a whole task. That is, we have 5 tasks. One of those is related to policy, regulations, human behavior. And we think that it's exceptionally important that we try to understand where those policies are that either get in the way or that could be put in place that would allow us to really accelerate and take this business off and really put people back to work retrofitting buildings. That said, I mentioned that we're at the nexus of issues of people, information, and technology. That means social, political issues when I say people, obviously, as well as information and technology. But one of the key things we're lacking is information and information sharing. So for right now, if I wanted to have the information on this building, it would be very hard for me to get that. It's even hard to get it released. So there are all sorts of policies and regulations that are between us and doing things like smart metering, attaching things to the grid. So we just had a meeting, was it about 2 weeks ago, with all the public utility commissioners in the mid-Atlantic region, asking them if they couldn't start to come together around this theme of opening up and having more sharing of information. So that would be a policy change. It would be a pretty dramatic one. And if we had that information, then as engineers, we could go to work faster, better, and more effectively. But let me tell you the flip side of it. So as this is happening, someone else has come along and said, you know, we need a policy against you guys. We got to have a law that protects the individual citizen from invasion of their privacy. So there's also, you know, these sort of cross-cutting things that happen that say, gee, you know, we just definitely don't need that kind of lawmaking. What we do need, though, is more liberalization of the policies. We can find ways to anonymize information, but we've got to get a lot more information out to everybody and stop having the utilities and others hold that as proprietary to themselves. And that's a big, big change. It's a cultural change as much as a policy change. But I think we could do it. If you demand it, it'll happen.
Ed?
I want to follow up on what you're saying about information. If anybody looked at my bio, I began my professional life in the intelligence business. I think information is essential, but what we really need is a policy that's integrated with programs, budget, and personnel. You can't just have policies. You got to have the ability to implement them, to enforce them, and you have to have the resources to to do that, and you have to have the people who know how to do that. So top on my priority is a workforce impact analysis. Unless you really understand, as you do with environmental impact, that when we introduced environmental impact, we changed the game because people had to define what the environmental consequences are, what they did. We need to balance that and integrate that with workforce impact. So, for example, the MTA in about 2001 put out $1 billion RFP.
MTA for Philly audience?
Sorry, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York, which is the largest transit system in the country. They put out $1 billion RFP to buy railroad cars, and Kawasaki, a company, got that bid. They wound up laying off their people because they said they didn't have the skills. But if the MTA or any transit authority or any company building or government is building, it says part of the RFP, you have to have a workforce impact analysis. You decide what the jobs are that have to be done, what the skills are that have to be done, like you do what the environmental consequences are. And then the Workforce Investment Act monies and the educational monies, the community colleges, the high schools can all mobilize those skills. And we can begin to say that green jobs are really, really important, and we want that training at the 4th grade math level, as we did with the chip fab plant up in Malta, New York. They came and brought billions of dollars because they said the math scores have to be high. You have to have that information to do that. And if it's a requirement in the RFP, then everybody, it's a level playing ground. Everybody has to say it, and then we can mobilize the unions, the businesses can mobilize, the educational institutions can mobilize. That information changes the game, the way environmental impact did, and that would be my highest priority.
Dr. Foley, can you talk? I know that there's some real work happening at GPIC with the sustainability workshop. I know those folks are in the house. Can you talk about how GPIC is doing this?
Sure. We have a whole task force really working on policies, as I said, but also education and workforce. That's one of the crucial things, as Mr. Murphy was just saying, is really educating from not just PhDs, but from GEDs to PhDs. Really, the whole supply chain, if you will, from those people working in the trades who need more information. We're putting on workshops for them, teaching them how to do these things. We're working together with a number of area trade schools and also community colleges to put together what we're calling a competency-based career mapping. Right? So what we'd like to do is really lay out for folks what they need to know, create a curriculum around it, and then export it, give it away, get as many people going on it as we possibly can. Because as we do that, I think we'll also see, I mean, the construction industry is a really entrepreneurial group of people. They're all entrepreneurs. If we could get the information to them and cut down on this asymmetry, then I think we could really see a tremendous uplift in this particular field of building efficiency. But as I said, building efficiency is important because we waste so much energy here. I'll give you one more number that I love, and that is every time you waste a quad of energy, what you've wasted is something on the order of $30 million, right? So you just let it go out the window. If you save 10 quads, that's $300 million. Well, that's $300 million that could be reinvested into the economy to do more productive things than to simply let it go out the roof and out the windows and so forth. So I think working on all of these strategies and try to really educate, a huge component of what we do in GPIC is education and information sharing and substituting good, clean information for misinformation. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation. Someone alluded to that, which builds skepticism towards green jobs, green energy efficiency, and so forth. So another part of what we have to do is we have to dispel the skepticism by actually demonstrating that these technologies do work, showing the economics work out, show people that the payback is there, and then bring that to the table and dispel the information that's saying, it'll never work.
So Don, I want to bring the policy question back to you. From a business perspective, what kind of policy drivers would help grow green jobs in your industry?
Two things in particular. From a tactical level, I think the fiber sourcing is important. I know the BlueGreen Alliance has done good work from supporting the businesses from that aspect. From a broader sense, certainly appreciating agencies like the EPA and raising the bar actually makes us better and can give those that are really behind it a competitive advantage. With that being said, lots of times that costs more money, majority of the time. although there's a payback, sometimes it's very long. And if you're making a truly financial decision, sometimes doing the right thing doesn't make the best financial sense. So I think economic support is probably the key to that. And as my fellow panelists mentioned, it's not just in the typical green jobs, but it's in the light and heavy manufacturing end of the business. And we've worked with New York State, with the Research and Development Agency, on getting some funding and some training and creating an awareness, which has really been beneficial. So I think the more government can invest from economic development, that's the best thing that could help our business.
Great. Judy, you're on the other side of this coin, right?
Well,
Policy driver.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like a million answers to your question, so let me focus on one. Don't forget the public health benefits. How many of you have a fishing license in Pennsylvania? So have you read that license lately in terms of what you're not allowed to consume because of mercury pollution or PCB pollution? I love the part of the fishing license that says if you're pregnant or of childbearing age, consume none. Like, that's a big part of our population who's never going to be able to consume freshwater fish in this country. So I think making the connection between, for instance, the mercury regulations that EPA just came out with and the tragedy of our fresh water being so contaminated that fish are not safe to consume. And we also know that lots of low-income families do consume fish. It's a protein source, it's free. What do we do to make that connection? This is very much an environmental justice issue, it's a social justice issue. So I think across the board, if it's recycling, which I applaud what your company is doing, if it's energy efficiency, if it's renewables, you know, on efficiency, preventing massive amounts of soot coming out of power plants is a public health issue. So just as unions have been extraordinarily effective in making sure people are not exposed to toxins in an occupational setting, I think green jobs has enormous public health benefits that need to be emphasized more.
Great. So one of the things that we've seen here in Philadelphia is that we had this tremendous influx of federal dollars for green jobs training, but in order to get people actually into good jobs at the end of the training programs, we needed to have a market for their services. And so there's been a challenge, I think, across the country, matching the supply and the demand. So what are your thoughts on what it would take to build the market for a sustainable economy so that folks who've been trained, who are ready to go to work, union workers can actually get jobs?
So
yes.
Let me just jump in and then I promise to stop talking. So, you know, job training is always tricky because you train people and then where are the jobs? So one of my colleagues, Shanine Mitchell from EPA, is here. She's going to talk tomorrow about brownfields job training. And I want to share a recent experience we had in Newark, New Jersey. Unfortunately, the Passaic River is heavily contaminated. It makes the Hudson look like a bird bath in terms of contamination. And we have a Superfund cleanup going on there. And we have a Superfund job training initiative. And what's different about this program is rather than just training people, we talk to the companies in advance. If people go through this training, will you hire these folks at the end? And thankfully, some of the companies involved in cleaning up the Passaic River said yes, and they were very enthusiastic. So we put out the word in Newark, New Jersey, very informally through churches and faith networks, labor unions, community-based groups. This was very much led by the Ironbound Community Corporation. We put out the word that we want to do Superfund job training. We had 500 applicants for 15 slots. And these 15 really inspiring low-income, unemployed workers went through the job training. It was 3 weeks. I was really pleased to speak at their graduation. They're now all employed. Well, 14 out of 15 were hired. And this is a pathway out of poverty. You start with the Superfund job training, and then you can get other job training. It's really important when you're doing Superfund cleanups and brownfield cleanups that you're not exposed to toxins. So the training is really important. So I would just encourage the job training push. You've got to think about where you're going to place people in advance. And it works when you do that.
Right. And the businesses need to be at the table.
Oh yeah, we had we had a couple really nice conversations with the businesses, and they really stepped up. And if you don't have that conversation first, it's futile almost.
Dr. Foley.
Yeah, I was going to add that you mentioned the 15 out of 500, and that's great. I always feel like I would have been one of the 485 that didn't get the call, you know. So I want to put the other 485 to work. And that's really, I think, in this construction area. The construction sector is $1 trillion a year. It's enormous. People don't realize how large it is. So if we could start to demonstrate the technologies, educate people, turn them loose, work with them on business plans, and make that cycle complete over the next 5 years, I think the thing takes off. And at least some of those other 485 are going to get jobs. Some are going to be bending metal, swinging hammers, shoveling things, but that's the point, is that it's a ground-up kind of approach to just creating a marketplace for these technologies and for saving energy. So,
Kevin.
Well, I would really applaud what both the previous speakers have said, and Judith, the proactive linking of employers and trainees is brilliant. I think we're seeing at the community college level across this country a real proactive effort to be talking to companies directly. And then there are great examples where a community college will build an entire, major focus because there's a company in the area that needs so many machinists or what have you. But the other point I wanted to make is what can we do to sort of create this market for these folks who are coming out of the training programs? As consumers, we are enormously powerful. So whether we're thinking about hygiene products or the kind of car we purchase or the kind of appliance we purchase, by choosing the more environmentally friendly option, that is creating jobs. That's driving business to companies, allows them to grow and create these new slots. And it's extremely powerful. So I just wanted to give a little nod to, in May, we're coming out with a new book. It's a consumer's guide for smart climate choices. It's called Cooler, Smarter. And it calls on all of us to commit to reducing our own greenhouse gas emissions by 20% in the near term. And each chapter, it just dissects our lives from an analytical perspective, from transportation, food we purchase and how we eat, to the stuff we buy, all of our electronics. It's really cool. It just dissects every facet of our lives and gives guidance as to how you can reduce your environmental impact and your global warming pollution. And I'm very excited about it because I think if we can really whip that up into a national campaign, that almost more than any policy you can invent will drive economic investment in this country in a big way to these green jobs.
So Don, from a business perspective, it sounds like the market for your green product has grown. What was the cause of that?
Well, it's certainly awareness. It's customer awareness. And from some of the polling that we've done, customers still wanted to make green decisions. They don't necessarily want to pay more, but they want to make green decisions. And we really, we work with our customers to actually show them the benefit of making green decisions. The Philadelphia Eagles were mentioned earlier, and they've been a customer of ours for about 5 years now. And when they were putting their Go Green campaign together, we sat down for 4 hours and said, how could we work together to make this happen? So not only do they utilize our products, but they also have anecdotes showing the equivalent of waste paper saved that day by using napkins is the equivalent to so many offensive linemen, or the amount of water saved is equivalent to this, or can fill up a stadium to X amount of feet. So customer awareness like that certainly helps pull through the jobs. And we deal with a lot of national food service chains that's the same way. So by creating that awareness creates the jobs. And then we find just by marketing that from our website and just letting potential employees know, it pulls a lot of people to us. And people will actually come to work for us, not so much for the money, but because they're really interested in making a difference in the environment. So it all goes hand in hand.
So I'm going to throw the last question out. In this climate, the federal funding opportunities around green job training required unlikely bedfellows to partner together across silos, labor, business, policymakers, workforce providers, and I think the Blue-Green Alliance is actually an example of unlikely bedfellows coming together to work together towards a common vision. So I'd like you to answer the question of how can labor, community, government, and business work more effectively together on these issues around building a sustainable green economy?
Well, I think what we've done in New York, and I think is happening across the country, is a big start, where people are coming together to build a consensus about what they have as a common interest. So in New York State, at the Office of General Services, mandating clean cleaning products, government working on that. The labor unions there learning how to use those. Clean schools, retrofitting buildings, doing that. That's in everybody's interest. You have to create that market. You can't expect the government's going to do it, and if the market's not there, you got to make sure that companies like yours succeed. We have to have an investment now. We have to create the market for you to succeed, for the workers that you hire to be able to succeed, and you got to create the market. That's where there's a role for government to do that. But that requires breaking down the barriers between environment, business, labor, and we've been doing that there, and a lot of people are doing it, academia. So whatever you do, we have to take it to the level of the unions. We're involved in the transformation of the labor unions, the consciousness of labor unions, working with IBW on solar energy. People realize it takes a little time, but you can do it, and you got to not define each other as the enemy. You got to be able to, like, talk about South Africa, somebody earlier. Reconciliation doesn't mean everybody agrees, but they agree that people operate in the same environment and have common interests, and we won't agree on everything, but labor and management have learned how to do that through contract negotiations. We can do that, and I think government and environment can do that together.
Other thoughts? Where's the common ground? How can we work together? Dr. Foley.
Sure. I'd be happy to jump in. You know, Judith was talking about the fact that you can't fish in the fresh water in the U.S., but we have lots of friends overseas in different universities, and you know, right now in Copenhagen, you can fish in Copenhagen. Can you imagine that, in the canals and waterways of Copenhagen? They turned it around that quickly, but it is because they were able to bring together major universities, government, and private industry. Now, I know it's not popular to look to the Europeans right now, but the Europeans do some things very well. They do. And one of these are these partnerships. What I've been impressed by is, though we don't say it's modeled on the Europeans, and I don't think we'd want to say that, I'm very impressed by what the Obama administration is trying to do with these hubs and DOE, because we're different than a national lab, right? We're not inventing the super nuclear powered water heater in the basement, right? Or something like that. We're actually talking about the nexus of people, information, and technology. We're actually trying to bring together and create adjacencies between private industry, academia, and government to create adjacencies between theoretical people and practical people, to create adjacencies then across the different spectrums that we see. And as you probably know, there are 3 other hubs, and there will be more of these. And I think it's just a really very interesting and different time that they've initiated this, and it's kind of exciting. Our hub in particular, you should know, we can spend more time and effort on these things that we call people and information, and not just science and technology, because our hub is quote unquote an ERIC, which is an Energy Research Innovation Center. And a couple of my colleagues are back there, but I think this came out of the Brookings Institute. Is that right, Paul? The whole concept of the innovation cluster and so forth. And they picked up on it, married it together with some of the things, the 8 or 9 big problems that Steve Chu felt needed to be worked on from his perspective at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and they married the two. And we're the first test case for it. So we have to be successful. Not too much pressure, but we have to be successful. And we're really pushing ourselves really hard to be successful, and to do it in this region first, and then to sort of use this approach elsewhere around the country. For buildings, yes, but for batteries and energy storage, you know, for wind power, smart grid, there are a whole host of these coming out. So as you watch for the science news, for those of you who read science news type things, you'll see this coming out over the next year or so. And believe it or not, Congress actually approved these, right? So in our case, for example, people from both sides of the aisle got behind it. how unusual is that? But, you know, it's logical, and so you can only hope that, you know, we could start to bridge that cultural, ideological divide with just common sense.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I think that's a great closing comment that we're talking about something that has been actually a bipartisan effort, that people, unlikely bedfellows, have come together to create an environment where projects like the Greater Philadelphia Innovation Cluster can be successful. Thanks so much, panelists, for joining us here today. Please join me in thanking
It's a pleasure to meet you. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed your comments.
And just stay seated.
And let me add my thanks to the panel as well for an excellent and thought-provoking discussion. Thank you very much again. And now I'd like to call on Robin Mann, the president of the Sierra Club Board, to come up for some last closing comments. Robin?
Thank you. Again, that was a very stimulating panel. I think it was a great way to end the day. Hello again from me and Sierra Club. I hope you've enjoyed spending the day and learning about the great work being done by numerous organizations, activists, and workers. And of course, we have another exciting set of workshops tomorrow, so I know you'll all be back. As we learn more and more about the ever-expanding common foundation we all have, it becomes clear just how much we have, how much work we have to do going forward. And I think it was very apt that we were told that we've done a lot of great work, and that means we have a lot more work to do. Thank you, Congressman Fattah. Our manufacturing base must expand to provide jobs that can build a more efficient, emission-free transportation system and retrofit buildings that use less energy. We must revitalize our energy sources by concentrating on training for new innovative technologies in renewables and create sustainable initiatives in our communities that will foster a healthy environment for our children. There are millions of jobs that could be created by green, environmentally sound projects. We need to support each other in efforts to create good, unionized jobs that are also beneficial for the environment. Get involved in projects in your communities, and if you already are, look for opportunities to build the alliances you have, build them further. Contact your state representative on job bills, on environmental regulations, and workers' rights issues as well. These 2 days will help build on the tools and knowledge we need to continue our work, use these tools, and use each other. We are each other's best resources as we move forward to build a sustainable, clean economy and society. The Eastern region has been the economic leader for centuries, so we must now reestablish our role by transitioning to clean energy and green jobs. I know we are all up to the challenge. Let's organize, let's face this challenge head on. Thank you, and I hope you'll take advantage of the immense opportunity that we have to build a greener, stronger workforce. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robin. And before you all head off to take a break and then come back at 6:30 for a reception that I have been promised will provide you with lots of good food, along with a cash bar and an opportunity to do a lot of networking, I wanted to reflect for a moment on what the Blue-Green Alliance and its partner organizations had hoped to accomplish by taking these Green Job conferences out of Washington and out around the country, as we've done now in 3 cities, and we'll head on to Detroit next month. And I think what we really hoped to do was to ignite a debate in this country about how you create jobs. We have a great paradox in our country today, that there is so much work that America needs done, and there are so many people out of work who want to do that, who want to exercise their skills in the construction industry we were just hearing about, and have been sitting on the bench for years now, unable to take their skills as carpenters and electricians and sheet metal workers back to doing this work that America needs done. I think there is a debate in America today about how to create jobs. There certainly is one camp that says the way to make jobs is to abandon government, to abandon the role of regulation and investment by the part of the public. It's a view that's summed up very simply. It's a view that said, let Detroit go bankrupt. But there's another view. There's another view on how you create jobs in America, and it's a lesson that I think we were all taught and learned very well. And we heard about it today from Kevin Knobloch and Nancy Sutley. It's the story about how Detroit, in an iconic industry that helped build the American middle class, our auto industry, was on the verge of stepping over a cliff in 2009, was on the verge of losing not just those jobs in assembly, but another 1 million jobs in the American auto parts industry. And it was an industry that had lost its way and had no longer become capable of seeing the cars and vehicle needs of the world of the future. And how did we fix that? In only 2.5 short years, through 3 simple things: smart regulations on the part of the government, a government that was aggressive enough to step in and say, we're going to create fuel efficiency standards so that America gets the cars that America needs. And secondly, we had a government that believed that strategic investments are the role of government in creating jobs. And they financed the reorganization of the auto industry when no private equity and no private bank was either capable or willing to take on that task. And finally, we had the kind of bold leadership in public-private partnerships led by organizations like the United Auto Workers, a member of the BlueGreen Alliance, led by environmental organizations like the Sierra Club and the Union of Concerned Scientists, NRDC, NWF, Environmental Defense Fund, so many that are here today, who said we can believe in a vision that creates American jobs in an industry making automobiles that will lead us into the future and solve our big environmental challenges. So, smart regulations, strategic investments, strong public-private partnerships, that's how you create jobs in America. You don't do it by letting Detroit go bankrupt. So that's the discussion we want to ignite. Let's go out from this conference and from the remaining Good Jobs, Green Jobs conference. Let's have that debate in America, and let's come back in the second week of November with a government that believes that this is the way we fix the problems America has, we fix our big environmental and economic problems, and we do it together. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the conference.
Train, a car.